Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our coffee chat with Dr. Feesh. In our last podcast series, we learned about grit and the importance of having a growth mindset to be successful in life. In the next few podcasts, I will talk about the anatomy of the brain, how it processes information, how the brain changes and grows through learning and effort, and how to maximize the brain's functions to optimize language learning and teaching. But today, we're just going to cover the anatomy of the brain because this is a lot of information to take in all at once in a short time frame. So here we go. The brain is made up of many cells called neurons. Neurons are responsible for communicating information from the outside world and your senses to the nervous system in order to direct your thoughts and actions. Put simply, neurons are what control the brain. Everything you think, say, and do. They are interconnected like a cobweb, and the strength and quality of the connections between these neural networks determine the skills and information you actually acquire. The stronger your neural networks are, the faster they're able to communicate messages to one another. So for a learner, this means that the information they study becomes easier to process and recall. There was a time in which scholars believed that developing new neurons was only possible until a particular age. However, new research has revealed that this is inaccurate. Neuroscience experts have found that the brain has greater plasticity than they once believed. In other words, it can change more so than they once thought. In fact, Carol Dweck, a psychology professor at Stanford University, has stated that as we mature, we may lose some neurons, but we also create new ones. The extent to which we keep them is dependent upon whether or not we challenge ourselves to do difficult tasks. Furthermore, there is research suggesting the harder you work, the more your brain grows, meaning it creates new neurons. So every time you practice a new skill or interact with new information, changes occur within your brain. And these changes are what learning is. So naturally, this knowledge raises two important questions. Is it possible to promote brain growth? And if so, how can it be done? The short answer to these questions is yes, and we do this by facilitating neural development. Neurons can develop in several ways, but first, I think it's important to develop an understanding of the basic anatomy of a neuron and how exactly these cells communicate information with one another before we address the ways that neural networks grow and how we can facilitate this process. But before we talk about neurons specifically, I want you to take out your phones and Google neuron. If you're a language learner, you spell neuron N-E-U-R-O-N. Look for a picture of a neuron and hold on to it as I talk about it. Here we go. So a neuron has three basic parts: the dendrites, the soma, and the axon. The dendrites are the part of the cell which receive messages from other cells. The soma is the cell body or the nucleus. The axon consists of two parts, the myelin sheath and the axon terminal. The myelin sheath is the part that looks like a sequence of blocks, and the axon terminal is the part of the cell that sends messages to other cells. So when a cell is sufficiently invigorated, it initiates an electrical surge through the axon and prompts a release of chemicals called neurotransmitters into a synapse. The synapse is a compact space between the axon branches of one cell and the dendrites of another cell. Every time a cell releases neurotransmitters, it communicates information to the other cells in the brain, and the body makes changes to the brain's composition. With experience, over time, and as changes increase, so too does your ability to process information. In other words, your ability to think and act becomes faster and more accurate. So now that we know exactly how the brain communicates information, in our next podcast episode, we'll talk specifically about the different ways the brain grows. That's a lot of information for a short period, so I think I'm going to cut this podcast off for here. Until next time, folks, peace, love you, je t'aime, te quiero, te amo, ahabukam, wa aini, saranghe, dostadora, sinisivyuram, vaslu, bluv, doyu bang, mahal ko kayo, seo yum, ish libidish, peace.